Welcome to episode 137 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I identify very heavily with this movie because at home, in my daily life, I am also controlled by a little girl.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of this podcast, and kind of like you, James, I mean, I looked at the way that you can be controlled here and there, and that one bright, shiny object, that jewel, I could easily see myself falling into that same type of situation where I'm just distracted by one shiny object.
Sounds about right. So, joining us once again, Dr. Andrew Scahill is here. Welcome back, man.
Hey, thank you for having me. Hey, thank you. This is going to be fun. I think this is a fun movie to talk about. It's a lot of my nostalgia centers for this kind of 1980s VHS kind of film.
Absolutely. This totally reminded me of the good old VHS days. Fantastic. So, first, I want to say you always pick interesting films.
Happy to.
But yeah, man, I'm still thinking about Baccarat, and now I got PG living in my head. So,
right.
You know. But yeah, man, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Andrew Scahill. I'm assistant professor of film at University of Colorado at Denver, and I specialize in horror genre and representations of youth rebellion in this film. So oddly, this film kind of fits right within kind of what I do.
Absolutely. That's great. And I know you've... I read your CV, and there's a lot of stuff about Frankenstein and different stuff like that. So I also thought that was an interesting connection.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And I get really interested in writing about sort of conservative periods of film. And for me, this film is a great sort of parody of the 1980s and all the kind of conservative politics.
Oh, definitely. We are definitely going to jump into that, man.
It's going to be a fun show, kids.
But yeah, why don't you lead the way, man? Because I feel like you already answered why. So we'll just skip that question and we'll head straight in. So lead the way.
So starting with this film, kind of what I'm curious about, maybe from you guys is when you're watching the film, what references do you feel coming out of it? Because I get like Masters of the Universe. I definitely get a lot of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, definitely in the kind of creature design. And I thought about The Gate and other films in which children discover this sort of malevolent force. I don't know, what were you guys thinking about when you were watching it? References to things.
I swear you took three movies off my list.
I already love this conversation. Great job. Don, go ahead, man.
All right, James. This is basically what I thought of this. Because you're starting off the movie, these kids are playing, and it made me immediately think about, growing up and how big playing outside was as part of, the youth experience. And the fact that the way the movie is shot, the way the kids are interacting, I mean, this is, I guess, closer to what Stranger Things tries to be. As far as the feel, not necessarily as far as the aesthetics and the things that are going on, but that whole idea of kids just went outside and made up shit. We would go out and dig a hole just because, and there weren't any necessarily any rules, so you had that freedom to explore and be a kid. Whereas I'm sure kids are still doing that stuff, but it's not as much of the culture because of technology and all these different things to entertain kids or keep kids occupied, or just the fact that COVID's going around. But no, even with the political element, as you mentioned earlier, this immediately made me think of all those 80s movies, things like Toxic Avenger. There was even a movie called, I don't know if either one of you saw this. It was like a B movie called Hunk, where this guy is a nerdy kid and he makes a deal with the devil to be like a heartthrob. And it's just as campy, just as goofy as any of the trauma films, or a good number of the slasher movies, or just the campy horror movies that we had in the 70s and 80s. And how you can quickly get caught up in the entertainment of a film like this, whether it happens to be the goofy jokes, the slapstick stuff that's going on, or even like the gratuitous violence or the comic violence that's there, and then completely miss some of the political messages, political jokes that are being made. So it's definitely worth watching. It's definitely worth the messaging that's there. And even beyond that, it's I mean, the jokes and the humor themselves help carry the story to where you sit there thinking like, why the hell am I laughing at this? This shouldn't be funny, but it is. Because of the way they one shoot it, but then also the characters that are driving what's taking place.
So my nostalgia on this is twofold, and one of them's really weird. So I'm going to start there. I have always been a diehard wrestling fan. And this movie reminded me of The Undertaker back in the old days. Okay. Because there was the urn that controlled his power. Oh, man. And I always thought that was hilarious in wrestling, right? Like, it was one of those things I could never buy into. I'm like, this guy's a like 300 pounds, 6'6" dude beating the shit out of each other. And then this little guy's like, got your urn. And he's like, oh shit, I can't do anything. and that's what this reminded me of. It was like that same feeling, right? And then the second part for me is, we all either were or had a friend who controlled everything at some point. And like, they were always like, every game was played by their rules, which were unnaturally favored towards one side. And this little girl just hit that so perfectly for me. Just that feeling of that kid that you want to punch him, but you're also like, but I need to have a friend.
Right. So, I mean, Mimi is the worst, really. This really is. I love that her name is Mimi because she's the most selfish, the self-involved character that you're going to meet. And I think it's hilarious in this film that she doesn't change at all. Right?
No, right. There is no redemption arc. Yeah, I thought that was fantastic. Even when her brother stands up to her, she's still like, okay, I'll give you a little piece right now, but the rules go back to normal.
Right.
That was great.
But what? That hits on the reality of that. Like, so many movies get caught up in the whole somebody has to learn a lesson, somebody has to grow, but the whole idea that her character is probably not going to change that much. if at all. So, I mean, I love that aspect of it because there's so many times where you're waiting. Like, even the dad, there's that moment where, he has the disagreement with his wife, and she's like, you never do anything. You don't do anything, blah, blah, blah. And he finally has a chance to kind of do something. And you're like, all right, cool. He's actually, I mean, he's being manipulated, but he's going to do something for his family or do something for his daughter. And he at least gets something, whereas Mimi, there is no redemptive arc with her, which I'm glad to see.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious, just as a conceit.
Well, and I think it makes perfect sense. Like, why would she change when the whole story is about her getting more power?
Right.
Like, that's not a reason to learn.
Yeah, right. I have this theory that Mimi in the film is a Republican, basically, in the 80s. And she goes through all these things, and then she gets to the end, and they say, it's either you save the Earth or you do this thing. And she's like, but my family's fine, right? Okay, cool. Destroy the Earth. Go ahead.
Wow.
So what do you mean really in the
awesome.
80s?
True. Right. She's kind of just Reaganomics, kind of manifest.
Well, the power trickles down. That's what you have to understand.
Obviously. It's worked so well.
That's fantastic. Don, I know you're dying to respond to that. So
no, I'm not saying a word.
Oh, come on!
Because I heard I heard a political theory about what the GOP is trying to do, and I do not want to talk it into reality. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. But I will say this. It's interesting, the monsters that we allow to, I guess, persist. In this case, where, Mimi could have used Psycho Goreman for anything, right? To take it back to The Simpsons with there's that Treehouse of Horror episode where they have the clay. James, do you remember what it was called? The
Golem?
Was like Gollum. Thank you. Where they had the Gollum, and you could tell whatever you told him to do, or on the slip of paper, he had to do. And there is that interaction between the characters, especially because it's Lisa. They try to have some good come as a result of having the Golem, get him to do good things, or at least, try to do better. Mm-hmm. But there's never that moment with her where she's kind of like, I have full control over this massive beast of a being. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to do anything worthwhile with it. And it's kind of like when you see people, I guess the most recent example is, people hoarding wealth, and then you see like, oh, there's all these things you could do to fix the earth or help the earth, and you could still make money from it. And it's like, no, I'd rather take my penis-shaped spaceship into space, or no, I've got another yacht I need to buy. Because the most recent thing I've seen over the past few months was, or most ridiculous thing I've seen over the past few months is these articles that talk about how the rich plan to live in floating cities due to climate change. And I'm thinking, like, how about we fix the shit that we have? Because you guys are all going to get eaten by the rest of us who don't have a floating city.
Maybe that's why they wanted to get away from us, right? So they can't be reached, a little Elysium up in the sky.
I mean, I have this theory that's the point of skyscrapers and penthouses is that you can't see the people below you anymore. So maybe that's exactly what they're doing. Who knows?
You're not wrong.
But no, going back to the film, I think one of the strongest things for this to me is this crazy juxtaposition that this ultimate monster who's hell-bent on destroying everything is somehow nicer to people than this little girl.
Right.
Like, that blows my mind. And it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel over the top. Like, it works. And I was watching this movie and I was like, there's no reason this movie's this good. This should not be happening. And it was great. But it's stuff like that. It's that absolute control, for lack of a better word, of characters and using their traits correctly. And man, I was just blown away by the writing in this film.
Yeah. Well, James, in some ways, people are the real monsters.
I think I heard that somewhere. So I don't remember where, though.
Yeah, no, someplace, some movie.
I think it started when I was a kid watching Scooby-Doo.
To go back to the campy stuff within the film, right? So we first, at least the start of the film, we get the overview as far as like, oh, this dark being the dark one has been locked away, and you get kind of the background of who this person is, and you get an understanding of the intergalactic war that's taken place and what his purpose is, right? And they unlock it, and we immediately get thrust into, okay, well, we're not going to drag this out. This isn't going to be something to where, halfway through the movie, we see like the big bad guy. This is going to be quick. We're going to get into it. And you get this first moment where you get to see how destructive, how powerful he can be, because he immediately just starts walking around. There are these guys, in the street, and which I wrote down. I was like, why would you talk shit to some huge being? And so they're all just acting tough, and I love this line where he's attacking them, and he says, "Your flesh is so unevolved and weak." That is a killer, no pun intended. That is a killer line for like an alien being or just a demon or what, because normally it's not delivered as well as that. But this line itself is just talking about how, maybe in another 1,000 years you'll be competition for me, or we could fight or whatever. But then he goes forward. One of the guys doesn't want to die, so he says, "Okay, cool," and he just lets him live in pain. And then when I can't remember, if Mimi knocked it over, her brother did, but one of the kids knocks the guy over. He splashes into into muck, right? And
great scene.
And PG's response is, "He was my masterpiece."
Right.
Delivering a completely straight, completely comedic line, completely straight. And it was great, because you look at the way in which this guy is supposed to be such a destructive force, and you juxtapose that with the fact that he is easily controlled and easily manipulated. It was, again, it's a testament to what was written, what was presented, and how it was portrayed on film.
There's something that this scene where he kind of destroys all of these hoodlums that feels like a direct reference to something, maybe Terminator. I can't quite figure out what it is, but it feels so familiar to me, that sequence.
Oh, yeah, as far as when he's going up to the guys and they all think like,
I'm tough. Right. I can't think of what film, but I feel like there's a scene like this from Terminator.
It would be that. It would be one or two. And you know what? Yeah, I would say one or two, because Terminator 3, the opening is ridiculous. Because the first one, it's those three, street guys or street toughs. They see him and he basically punches through one of them. And the second guy feels like, it's like, oh, well, I've got a switchblade, so I'm going to try and attack you. And the third guy is smart. The third guy's smart and is like, here you go, take my clothes. I'm not going to mess with you.
Right. Yeah, that's got to be it.
It's almost got a vibe from another Arnold movie that I love, Kindergarten Cop, where when he parks at the beginning, there's like all these like gangsters around, and he looks back and he's like, "My name's John Kimball and I love my car." And he's just got the gun and he's like staring him down. Like, it's kind of got that vibe too. Just, are you sure you want to fuck with me? Okay.
Right. So Mimi has this gem that they discovered in their backyard in that kind of gate like sequence, and she finds out that it's able to control him. And I do like that she's able to control his body, but he can still say whatever he wants, and they kind of mine a lot of comedy from that, I think.
Oh yeah. I literally haven't been able to go anywhere and hear like somebody say "have a nice day" without thinking it would be better if you were dead.
Oh, okay.
It's just constantly in my head now. So. But I love that he can't do anything about it. He can just run his mouth. He can't harm anyone, so his threats mean nothing. It's so fantastic. But even when she first uses it, like she uses it like not necessarily like a kid, but it's a very human response. It's, what kind of dumb thing can I make you do? Like, I'm still testing it out. It hasn't occurred to me I could do something big.
Right.
You know? It's not like go knock over that car.
Right. She uses it to torment her brother, largely.
Absolutely.
Well, wouldn't we all? I mean, even at that age, you look at it as your understanding of the world is very small as far as what you can control. So it might. Because my wife, we were going to pick up our daughter earlier today, and it was just not a strange question, but it was like strange timing of the question, because it came out of nowhere, and it was like, what would you do if you had $100 million? And I just laid out what I would do and the people I would help, and then kind of the selfish things I would do with the money as well. And if you said $1 million, if I'm the same age as Mimi, I'm going to think of all the toys, especially in the 80s. I'm going to think about all the toys, all the material stuff I can get, and maybe have like a cool pool party or something like that. And she's doing the same thing here, as far as you get the understanding that this guy is probably very powerful. If he were a genie, she would have wasted all 3 wishes.
Right.
But even when she has him there, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm just going to fuck with my brother more because I'm kind of tired of doing it myself. So I may as well use somebody else to do it for me. And I'm considering like what I would do if I had Psycho Goreman, at my beckoning call. There would be a lot of stuff that would be broken, destroyed, broken into, and then I would just eventually release him because I would just, kind of like them. I would just come up with a deal where it's like, all right, you can fuck around with everything. Just leave Earth alone. There's some really cool places I haven't visited yet. But yeah, as far as her understanding the world, it's very small. And you see that even at the end, as far as like, oh, my family's okay, so I'm good. I don't need to worry about the rest of the galaxy. Fuck them.
Right.
That's so on the nose, though. And this whole control thing, not to keep harping on Republicans and that whole thing, but like, I feel like this has to be, no matter which side you're on, I'm right. I feel like this has to be what Trump felt like when he got military power. Just like a 6-year-old girl who suddenly has destruction at her fingertips. Like, I don't know.
No, I think it's absolutely it.
But yeah. So.
I'm just imagining him in the room with like the little green man and the toy tanks and making the little helicopter sounds. Melania, look at me. I've got some Apaches. I got it.
Oh man.
That's pretty good.
And then Colonel Sanders busts in and he's like, I did not see you playing with your dolls again, sir.
Oh gosh. I guarantee he was looking for a guy named Colonel Sanders while he was like, I want to know what the formula is to the chicken. What is it?
Oh man. How we have degenerated.
So one of the things that I think is really interesting about this movie is that we initially get this sort of demon monster, right, that is threatening to destroy Earth, that she's able to control, and we think, oh, this is the villain of the film, right?
Right.
Even if he's under control. And then we cut away to this kind of like Templar Intergalactic Council, which for me is when the film became something else. And not only am I starting to think about the politics of this film, but let's just say the creature design in this film is pretty amazing. And this sequence really kind of showcases it, where we see this sort of council of all these different creatures who seem to be pulled from different franchises in sci-fi.
So that wasn't just me then. Okay.
No. I mean, I think
I was like, some of these guys feel like ripoffs, but all right, go ahead.
But I think in that sort of tongue-in-cheek way, where you can say that looks from Babylon 5, that looks like it's right out of Mars Attacks, right? I think it's incredibly conscious because this film for me is designed to hit all of those kind of like nostalgia memory centers and to evoke other films without being too literal about it.
I like that.
Because I mean, you look at later on when this this group of marauders that used to be Psycho Goreman's henchmen, when they come down, they're totally a parody of Thanos and the Black Order.
Right.
And I think there are moments of that where I just think it's so funny and so clever.
You also have to consider, well, because even when it came to that group, I thought the entire scene was funny because you imagine all these beings, right, as part of this space council, or the Templar Council. I'm sitting there thinking, like, I wonder, well, one, from a sci-fi standpoint, I wonder if this is actually what it would look like, because we have so many examples, right, that we've been given. Whether it happened to be Star Wars, Star Trek, Babylon 5, Stargate, Battlestar Galactica, any of the ones that are out there, where there's always this meeting of the minds between the power brokers or people that are part of these assemblies and associations. And for once, I was glad to see it not taken as seriously as it's always presented. I mean, one, because the film that you're presenting, or at least the film you're presenting this in, but then also there were just serious moments that didn't need to be serious in other movies. Or in some cases there were some moments that really didn't need to be included. Like the Senate scenes in the Star Wars prequels, where some of it got a little funny and you're kind of like, I don't think they meant for this to be funny. Whereas this one, it's fun because of the way that you show these people, you show these beings interacting and then going over what their plans are and how they're going to be able to stop him and what they're going to do. And this whole idea of like, nobody actually wants to do it, which again is great, because then you get into this whole thing of, you see all these people that have political power or have wealth or have some type of social standing, and they'll tell you what needs to be done. But then it turns into, well, I just have the idea. I'm not going to go out there and do it. We need to stop him. Okay, let's go. No. I'm just saying we need to stop him. I'm not going to go out there and do anything about it. But, well, what's the plan? I don't know. We need somebody to come up with a plan. And you just see kind of how, not necessarily how bureaucracies work, but you see how, committees in a lot of cases work, where everybody, or shouldn't say everybody, but there are people on these committees that have ideas, but they don't know how to execute the ideas until you eventually get to you get one person who steps forward or gets volunteered to do it. And, everything rests on that one person being able to pull it off. And in this case, it doesn't happen.
Right.
I want to go back to something you said earlier. You said it felt like a trauma film, right? And I did some reading. I was like reading other people's reviews and things like that, and that just kept coming up. And I thought that was very interesting, because I feel like there were so many movies that did crazy stuff back in like the 80s and early 90s, and somehow we all we only have trauma now. We don't talk about those. And I thought that was kind of strange. And that led me to like really staring at the poster, like thinking about the VHS covers, like we kind of mentioned earlier. And man, this would have been that film that like all of us just kept waiting for, because it was always gone, and it had like the coolest cover ever, and you needed to know what it was just because the poster is so great. And that's when I realized that it also says little girl, big psycho. And I'm no longer convinced that's about Psycho Gorman.
For sure.
But yeah, it's just I was really thinking about how not only does this movie feel like those throwbacks, and I think part of that is that there's no established time for this film. It seems like it's taking place today, but then we're talking about video games, and the TVs are obviously not today. Right. And like everything's just in such flux with that I think it really kicks that up. But I don't know, like, were there dads like this dad back then? Because I feel like there are now. Like in my house, there's one. And but like, I don't know, all my friends' dads in the 80s and 90s were like they still wanted to be John Wayne, and I don't know. Maybe it was just because I lived in Nebraska. Who knows?
That might have been the Nebraska thing.
Okay. All right.
I think there's always been man babies who are lazy and don't want to do any work, and their wives have a seething hatred towards them. I feel like I've met these dads through all decades.
Her dad's my favorite character in this film.
He's a really funny actor, and I've seen him in bit parts in other movies. And this one, though, really kind of allows him to be the pathetic person that he kind of excels at.
Can you imagine PG's anger when he had to give him directions? Like, he's got to do it because he needs it done. But I'll bet that was just eating him alive. But yeah, overall, I really like the dad. I feel like it really works. Like, he's obviously just been beaten into submission by this little girl. I mean, I'm sure he was already kind of lazy and had no spine before that. But I feel like Mimi really pushed him over the edge at some point.
You know what character he reminds me of is Jerry from Rick and Morty.
Oh, yeah.
just that really pathetic character who will run from anything in order to save his own hide.
Yeah, I like that. You know, and speaking of nostalgia, it's kind of interesting because, like, in the 80s, we had these movies like E.T. or Mac and Me, where we would find the alien and we had to take care of them.
Uh-huh.
And we had to be the hero, right? And we had to do all these things. And, I mean, this is a throwback in that direction, but it's definitely in a different place.
Yeah, because in that, you know, E.T. was this really kind of vulnerable object. You know, he was in creature design, he was the combination of the two most vulnerable classes of human beings, an old person and a fetus, were combined into one. And it marked this turn really towards rethinking the next generation and their alignment, not with the government, but with the immigrant and with the refugee, and protecting them from the government. You know, whereas in the 50s, they were always kind of rendered catatonic by these alien forces and had to rely upon the government to protect them. And we see a real change in the 80s. And it's kind of evidenced by that generation's growing distrust of its government, particularly around issues of nuclear armament.
Yeah. Wow. God, you just like totally blew my mind with this. I've never, I've never thought of that.
Other films in the era like War Games, right? They pitted the child against the military-industrial complex, and for me, this film's almost a parody of that kind of that kind of triangulation of the child as protector of the alien because they're so vulnerable, and in this case, not vulnerable at all, right?
Right.
But what's really kind of interesting to me too is, again, we think that Psycho Goreman is the villain of the film, maybe from the poster or what have you. At the very least, we think he is in the wrong, right? But then you get this really interesting exposition from Psycho Goreman, where you realize that his status and his anger is more or less kind of like a slave revolt, right, against this colonial power. And it really kind of resituates the whole the sort of political structure of the film.
Yeah. Don, what do you got for that?
No, I'm just.
That's me saying I can't follow that.
Because that's another that definitely is another way to look at it, as far as he's under her control, right? But there's also this moment where he's seeking his freedom, and I love looking at it from that perspective. Changes the way I see some of the statements that he made to her or to them, right? Because at first, when he's like, "Oh, if I ever get free, I'm gonna squish you, I'm gonna destroy you, I'll melt your inside." You know, he's giving all this very bombastic presentation about what he will do if they don't have the gem anymore. And if you look at it from that perspective, as what you're saying, as far as with slave revolt, slave rebellion, the idea then becomes, as far as his actions or what he's saying are going to be his actions, it then becomes focused on that's what's in the mind of someone who is being controlled, which they're not going to say, but that's what's in the mind of someone who's being controlled, of like, oh, when I get out of here, whether we're talking about slavery, we're talking about a toxic relationship, whether we're talking about, toxic marriage or toxic relationship with a sibling or a parent, that same type of feeling would be there, as far as when I get out of here, you're done. I'm gonna do whatever I can.
Right, absolutely. So I have this feeling that this film is, if you want to go kind of literary with it, I feel like this film is kind of a take on Paradise Lost, where Psycho Goreman is Satan, right? Who's fallen, but of course in Paradise Lost, in Milton's text, he's kind of a sympathetic figure, right? That he is sort of falsely imprisoned and cast out of heaven by a kind of capricious God.
Right.
Wow. I like that. Even like people coming to stop him. And it's almost kind of a religion, like following this other hunter.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the film literally makes the sort of antagonist who are seeking to recapture him as the Knights Templar, which is the kind of like colonial power of the Catholic Church in a way. And so I find it fascinating because this film is asking, like, which is worse, chaos or this sort of grotesque order that the Knights of Templar represent.
And you know what? That is a good question, because that was something not specifically that I was thinking about during this, but it was the whole idea of which one is the better option, right? And if we're talking about any type of, let's talk about just revolutions themselves. And what typically comes up is, if you're going to overthrow or depose the king, depose the leadership, whatever it is, the question is always, well, what are you going to do when you take over? And is it better for us to have a situation where we are exercising self-rule and we're the ones that are in charge? It may be chaotic at the beginning. We may fumble over some things, but at least we're the ones that are dictating it. Or we allow the people that were dictating it before to continue, but they at least know that we can get rid of them. And I think by having that council, you also see how ineffective they are, but then also how just how bad they are at what they're doing. It almost seems like in a lot of situations, people are put into places of power because of previous generation or previous generations before them, not necessarily because of their own merit. It's often sometimes because of whatever other connections they may have had or whatever else is taking place for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because even then you kind of question it, not in their case, but as far as the comparison, is it better to stick with the monster or the monster you don't know?
I mean, that's even true for her brother.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's interesting how it works on like several levels with this film as well as reality. But, what do you guys, this is kind of veering off a little bit, but what do you guys think of the fact that it's called PG? Like, we went back to these alien movies from a long time ago, not Alien, but, movies with aliens. And that's kind of where it started, right? The whole PG-13 rating and all that kind of stuff. I think it's kind of fascinating. There's some different marketing stuff from this where the PG for Psycho Goreman is very clearly the PG rating from the MPAA.
Right.
And or the MPA, I guess. Sorry, there's no longer two A's, but you know what I'm saying. And I thought that was fascinating, and I didn't know if you guys even noticed that or if it's just a weird thing I paid attention to. But I think that's even saying something here.
I think it's a parody of the PG rating, at least the way it was used in the 1980s, specifically the PG-13 rating, which kind of like said no sex represented, right? But we can represent all forms of violence, which is kind of what this film does, right? You can't say fuck in this film. You have to say frig you. But they show people's heads being torn off and people being eviscerated in the most grotesque manner. And I think that's that kind of parody of the kind of empty logic of the PG rating and the idea of what threatens children.
Yeah, and I thought that was so great to throw in there. And then I was like, I'm just sitting here as a writer, like, did you already call it Psycho Goreman and you realize this? Or did you work to find a name that fit this joke? And I don't know. And I don't know which one's funnier to me.
I think it's the second one. I mean, I don't think it's a good name. It doesn't.
That's what I love about it.
Right. They were debating other names that are far superior. So I feel like it's a joke on the PG rating.
It's up there with the greatness of Beastmaster. Fun movie, terrible title.
I know. Right. Can I just ask, were you guys at all surprised that in the middle of this movie we have a full-on musical sequence?
Surprised? I mean, I don't know.
again, that's why. I mean, aside from the way the gore and the action and things like that, when that happened, I was like, "This is trauma. This is."
Troma would have had 7 more.
Well, yes, you're not wrong.
And he would have had a monster penis at some point, or a penis monster, depending.
Yeah.
But
like a guar penis, just spraying all forms of fluid. I find this sequence hilarious because it's like another genre, you know. It's like an '80s teen pick where they're having a montage in the dressing room with different outfits, and the little boy who'd been turned into a brain trying on different hats.
I love how it's just totally normal that Krang's running around over here.
Yeah.
Where are the Ninja Turtles when you need them?
Totally.
Well, he's obviously not bothering anybody. He's not trying to take over the world.
I like how it's so normal to everybody. They're just like, yeah, that's the kid that looks like a braid. He used to be our friend. Now he's our pet.
There's so many things in this film that, you know, when Psycho Goreman goes and confronts the cops and turns one of them into a zombie, and you think it's just going to be this sort of momentary gag, but then that character ends up being kind of a minor character throughout the next, you know, half hour of the film.
Comes with us now.
Right.
Especially when Psycho Goreman's running around, kind of dressed like John Wayne, kind of dressed like Sam Neill in Jurassic Park. You know, I mean, one of those. But yeah. No, I love stuff like that, though. Like these extra characters and how they just come along. Like, we don't need to explain them away. They just come to. And we don't need to have a big moment where they join the team. They're just here now. And what I love about it is somehow it makes perfect sense. And I hate the writers so much for that because I can't do that.
Right.
So if I did it, everybody would be like, no, James, that's not working.
Right. You're like, but what if I make him try and commit suicide during his time on screen continually?
He's just walking around in the background trying to kill himself, you know.
I can't even tell you why I think that's so funny. It's just hilarious to me.
I think it's amazing how they take something so serious like suicide and somehow it's hilarious in this. Like there's something about him not having a face and all that stuff that just makes it okay.
Right. He can't bring his joints up high enough to shoot himself in the head is the problem. I don't know. I go back to like why I find Harold and Maude so funny. All of the kind of attempts to commit suicide in that film. There's I guess the dark humor of it. I really appreciate. Heather's has kind of a similar tone, I'd say.
You know what I just noticed? You have PG over here who just wants to kill somebody, and you have the cop 2 feet away from him who just wants to die. And then you got this girl that won't let either one do it.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
We did jump over something because I meant to bring this up, but you're talking about the cop wanting to kill somebody or kill himself. But the first time that they meet, you know, they meet PG. I mean, he's with the kids, and it's kind of like, oh, stop where you're. And then one cop says to the other, he's like, remember your training. And his response is, there's no time. Shoot him.
Yep.
Right.
And again,
I thought that wasn't the training.
Yeah, well, yeah. My first thought was, oh man, this is going to be a good one to comment about. But you know, it's taking the political, or at least taking current events and putting them in there. But even then, it's not that current of an event because that's always been commentary about the police or criticism about the police in film. When they're not portrayed as the hero, it's kind of like either you're the bumbling guy or you're the loose cannon who just wants to kill somebody, and you know you got a badge so you could do it. So that's that interaction. Yes, it's a comedic scene. It's a funny scene because of the way that they portray it. But then you start to really think about the way that the creators actually wrote this into it, where it is. Yeah, I'm gonna basically call out the shit that they do.
I'm not a gun guy, but I can't imagine thinking that if I saw this thing, my best course of action is to stand here and initiate combat. Like, I don't know. It seems like a bad plan. I'm not sure running would help me. I know how I run, but I don't feel like that would, like, pissing him off would help.
Look, that's the moment where you would be like that cop in the town where the bank robbers are all coming out of the, they're swapping cars, and there's that one police car that's sitting right there. They make eye contact with the cop, and the cop just turns his face because he's like, no, I didn't see you guys with all these automatic weapons. I didn't see you. I'm overmatched. Yep, I'm just going to look over this way. I didn't see anything.
That guy over there is speeding. I gotta go.
Or you could be like the cops in Batman Returns, where they say, to Catwoman, please, miss, our take-home's only $48 a week. And she goes, you're overpaid. Hit the road.
It's a great movie.
It is. So I'm so curious to get your thoughts on the arrival of these kind of Black Order sort of groundlings that we get, because I think it's some of the most ridiculous creature design I've ever seen in films. I find it so funny that they all seem to have these intricate mythologies and backstories that the film never gives us, right? And yet they all seem to sort of exist in their own mythology. And I'm curious to get your thoughts.
I thought everything with them was just amazing. Like, whether it's, just any time that they're shown, but it almost even feels like a bad, like, LARP for a second. It's like,
yeah.
Like, there's just that moment where I was like, this feels like everybody's going to remove their masks any second. And,
right.
But thank God that didn't happen. But the thing I love most about it is that they are just spineless and going with whoever's in power. Right. I don't know. I think that there's a lot to be said about the similarities there with some certain politicians, but I won't name names. Right. But, I don't know. I felt like this was so well done. And like you said, it's like they have these elaborate backstories we don't get to see. I want that to be released the way 13 Ghosts was, where they could tell us about each one.
Uh-huh.
I would watch that in a heartbeat.
I like that you call these LARPers, because you're right, because it feels like they're 5 people who are just standing next to each other at a comic book convention, but they're from completely different franchises, Yeah. I personally love, and I don't even know their names, but I love the graveyard man who just throws gravestones, and that's it.
What a great superpower that is.
It's pretty amazing.
It's like a D&D campaign gone totally wrong.
Right. Or there's a moment where one of the creatures, he opens him up, and there's a rose inside that he pulls out, and that's the one causes his death. And I love that they don't bother to explain to you how this works or what the physiology is or the mythology. It's just really funny to me.
And what's great about that is that would also happen. Like, if this really happened, they would know each other's stuff and how to defeat each other or whatever, but we'd be standing there like, what the fuck was that? So it's kind of great how that works, and yet it's hilarious at the same time. And also a rose. I mean, of all fucking things, that's great.
I love it. And the way we should say that the kills in this sequence are also incredibly over the top and grotesque. I don't even know what to call the bucket which spews blood. But it's pretty great the way he destroys all of these people. And one of them, he destroys him through existential dread by making him look into the abyss of his own dark soul. Ridiculous.
I would love to have heard the conversations making this film.
Absolutely.
All right, I got a new kill. Oh, is it super bloody? No, better.
It's ennui. And then we kill them bloodily, yeah. But first that.
I will make you beg for your own death. Yes.
And there's a character in here, the witch character, which seems to be kind of a Rita Repulsa character. This sequence, I get a lot of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers out of it too. Even the way that they shoot the fight sequences someone has studied the shot sequencing in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and they're reproducing some of these kind of ridiculous angles so accurately. I don't know. It's funny thinking about this as a modern film, right? Because it does feel very much of the 80s era. But how little we do practical effects now. I watched this and I was like, God, they're really fun, and you had so much creativity with it when you weren't so reliant on green screens and digital work.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, that's one thing that this show has really taught me. As I'm going back watching older stuff, like practical effects are always better.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't found an exception to that because 10 years later, it won't be true anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you know me, Don, I don't watch stuff the first 10 years that it's out. So
or the first 30.
Or the first 90. Yeah. But eventually. No, but really, like when we were looking at the Universal monsters, all the practical effects, not all of them, but a lot of them hold up better. And so many films have been that way. And I don't know. It's one of those things that I kind of knew, but I never really overly analyzed. And now that I keep seeing it, I'm like, holy shit, I never want to have CGI in anything I make.
And there's something too about the freedom that practical effects gives you, where you can. I have to imagine that this wasn't entirely planned. That you have 5 bodies in costumes and you play around with different ideas, and you can't do that with green screen work. You have to kind of know exactly how it's going to work out, and you're going to have that little tennis ball and a stick, and you say, okay, everyone look at this thing and scream, and it's going to hit you, and everyone jump back as far as you can, like you're getting hit. It's just the physicality doesn't allow for the same level of spontaneity, creativity.
I could definitely see that. Yeah.
We talked about the dad earlier, very briefly, but he has a couple of really good scenes in this. I mean, there's the bathroom scene where he's given directions, but there's also this one scene where he's talking to Mimi about, courage and brave, trusting people and all this stuff. And I immediately thought they were about to go so dark with this movie because he says, oh, well, when I was a kid, there was this guy who had a van and he asked me if I wanted to look at his baseball cards. And you know what I did? I got in that van. You know what I learned? And I'm just like, I'm sitting there like, please, God, no. He says, I saw the most beautiful baseball card collection in all of my life. And I just started laughing. I was like, wow, like you almost went there. You had me thinking we were going there.
Right. And
you pulled it back to where it's like, this is just a goofy fucking dad who has no clue about what was appropriate, what's inappropriate, and actually how to be a good dad. Because it should, in all honesty, hindsight, or just from the outside, you're looking at this and saying, like, you should have said this to her. But then it wouldn't be a funny comedy horror if it actually get.
Yeah, it would go somewhere very, very different at that point.
Yeah, I'm just glad it didn't go where it went, because that was.
Well, it's kind of that anti-joke formula, right? Where you make the audience imagine the very dark punchline, and then you don't go there, right? And you make the audience almost kind of like embarrassed by their own cynicism.
Right. Like, what were
Which
you
is
thinking,
a beautiful
Bill?
gift.
Right.
There's something wrong with you, Bill.
I thought they were going to talk about slot car racing. What's going on with you? Or model trains.
No, I love how it's established throughout, though, that he is always inappropriate and always says the wrong thing. and that it's like such a pet peeve of moms, like that. I love that, like it's just so ingrained, so that when we get here and he's about to tell this story, like I don't doubt at all that Dad would tell her how he was violently raped in a van. Like I'm just like, oh shit, here he goes.
Right.
And then no, not at all. And then I'm like, but that also totally fits his character. Like this is what I mean on the grasp of character in writing this. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah. And we used to say that, the wife doesn't get the kind of lines that she does, but I think she's playing the straight woman role really well in this. They put this kind of like seething hatred underneath all of her line deliveries.
And then she joins the dark side.
Yeah, right.
I mean, wouldn't you with this family?
Right. She's
Probably.
Bullshit.
Would I join the dark side with this family? It's an interesting question.
It might be an improvement. So
can I just turn little Mimi over to the bad guys or not?
I think they would hand her back.
And also her game rules make no sense at all.
Oh my God. But they make perfect sense, because we often, I mean, to go back, and I'm assuming, the people who are writing this film were probably around all of our same age, growing up in the 80s and thinking about the way that games were conducted. We often change the rules. Like if something, and even the same thing with sports. They wait until the end of the year to change a rule or adjust something and rule something was a catch when it wasn't a catch, or vice versa. It's totally plausible, but it's also extra believable because of who she is, where she has to be in control of everything. To the point where if the game is not going the way that she wants, it's, oh, well, I'm going to, it was actually this many points and this is how you actually win. Which leads to that one cool line where one of the aliens who's watching, basically says, like, I just don't understand sports.
It's like me trying to watch rugby or cricket. I don't understand the rules at all.
You got to know what a crumpet is to understand cricket.
That's my first problem.
I had to bring it back to the Ninja Turtles.
Right.
Anyway, no, I have a 6-year-old daughter, and this is how games work in our house. So for me, I was just like, I came in here to get away from that. No, I mean, yeah, I just accepted that's how games work now. The rules change constantly, and they're always rigged against me. And yeah.
So this film resolves, right, with them having to invoke the honorable request of the Fallen to have a duel, but based on the sort of the Fallen's choice, and of course he chooses Crazy Ball, which I think is one of the great kind of circularity to this script is that you think, oh no, they're not gonna go here for the climax of the film, but of course they do, and it's so stupid and ridiculous. I think it's hilarious.
I mean, as a writer, I was expecting it to come back to Crazy Ball, but I thought it would be like some play from Crazy Ball.
Right.
I didn't think it'd be the whole thing.
And it's funny to me that the dad seems to know and understand the rules because he's a child himself.
Everything makes sense to him.
Right.
He probably knows where Grandma's buried.
That's a line.
Did you catch that line? That's like my favorite line in this whole fucking film. Is this where we buried Grandma? And I love that there's nothing else to it. So now I have like 9,000 questions.
Right.
Like, why did you bury Grandma? Was she alive? I don't know. I don't know what the fuck happened here.
I thought you were talking about the line where they're talking to each other in Morse code, and he says, "Is that where Grandma is?" And she goes, "I told you, Grandma's in hell."
Another great line. Well, and now you're playing with a demon, so it might be where Grandma is.
Right.
I said hello.
But yes, so we get the ending, and we get Mom on the wrong side of things because she's joined the others in trying to defeat them. And I think that's so great because like this mom isn't like, oh, I should take care of my children and I should help. No, she hates Dad so much that she sacrifices her kids and joins the other team. Maybe all this explains why Mimi is the way she is. Maybe I've been too hard on her.
Right. And I have to say, one of the sight gags at the end here when they win, because the father's been complaining about his poor sprained wrist all movie, and he goes to high five Psycho Goreman and actually breaks his wrist. Or
this is just break it,
protruding grotesquely from it.
It looks like they've been bitten open.
Right.
And now he's got to drive, and he's got to no.
Like hard for him.
Speaking of nostalgia and throwbacks to these movies we had when we were kids, the credits of this film feature a rap that tells you the story of the film. And I was like, holy shit, I don't think I've seen this since the Addams Family.
That's exactly what it sounded like.
Well, I guess Men in Black, I guess.
Right,
but
right.
Yeah, you know.
It definitely felt like the Addams Family rap to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would argue the Men in Black rap is a good song on its own, so it doesn't feel so weird. But this felt like the Addams Family "Do What You Want to Do" song, you know. So,
wait, did you have to look that up, or did you have that on recall?
Oh no, I definitely it's stuck in my head for all eternity.
Impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, I know way too much of that song, unfortunately. But no, I thought that was such a great thing to add because it's so unnecessary. Yeah. Like, what if we wrote a rap here that explains the story of the film? Nobody's done that in years.
They'd be on brand.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's the thing right there. This feels so perfect for this film. Like, you're just sitting there like, yeah, of course you did. Why wouldn't you? And since I keep talking about the Ninja Turtles, at least it's not as bad as that Vanilla Ice rap, right?
Oh my God.
No, we could have gone the entire show without talking about that.
I'd block that out, yes.
The rule of 3, I had to find another one. And for any of you who are confused and don't know what we're talking about, please don't go look it up.
Yeah, I definitely won't be singing at the end of this episode. So,
oh man, could you cut a rap like that summarizes this episode? Like, I want to hear you rap about Reagan.
Oh God, no, I'm not. No. Then this show will get banned from from the carrier.
You know, I love that the film ends with the brainchild still in the brain, eating dinner with his parents, and it's kind of uncommented on it, and it just lets the moment lay there in all its awkwardness. I kind of loved that as an ending as well.
I would like to see a sequel of this kid's life going forward, but it has to be written the same way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like the brain that came to dinner or something like that. That'd be great.
Like that.
Just imagine him trying to find a helmet to like go to the skate park.
Yes.
Yeah, because he's even more vulnerable, right? He doesn't have a skull helmet.
All right, so I suppose we could jump into movie recommendations. Andrew, if you want to go first and tell people what they should watch if they liked this.
Sure. I mean, if I'm thinking about other films that have the same sort of ridiculous, campy sense of humor and the same kind of gore, I have a couple in mind. One is a film called Dude Bro Party Massacre 3. Do you know this one?
I do not.
It is stupid as hell, very funny, parody of the kind of campground slasher, definitely done in that kind of VHS way. In fact, you have moments in the film where the VHS will kind of like fuzz out and you'll see someone's wedding video underneath it as if they recorded this off of public access late at night. It's a really funny film that I think revels in its trashiness. It's one called Final Girls, a little bit upscale version of this that was also got a ridiculous sense of humor about it, also a campground slasher parody. And then this other film, I want to say from 2 years ago, called Bloody Hell. Do you guys know this one? I think it has a similar kind of sense of humor. I always describe it to people as it's like Hostel, except the guy is kidnapped by the Von Trapp family. And hilarity ensues. I think it's a really, really funny, underseen film. So those are my...
Don, what do you got?
All right, I've got a good bit. I'm going to cut some of them off on here, but Slacks, which is also on Shudder.
Are you fucking kidding? That's my only one.
Are you kidding me?
Oh my god. Well, fine.
See that you normally go. You normally go before me.
I thought there was no way in hell you were going to hit Slacks. All right, go ahead.
All right. The Wolf of Snow Hollow is another good one. Yeah. Scare Me, I had. I'm going to steal another one that James could have had, which was Mortuary Collection. Let's see. There's Mars Attacks.
Still my favorite
Alien
thing
stuff.
This year. What's
Mars
that?
Attacks, Slither, They Live, The Thing. I would just say the entire Evil Dead series. Poultrygeist, which I don't think I mentioned, because that was the first thing I thought of when people started getting killed. And then, we already mentioned Critters, The Gate, Frankenstein, all that stuff. So those would be some other ones to include.
Yeah,
very nice. Mine is Moon. No, I'm just kidding. That's for anybody that listens all the time because I constantly say Moon. I'm going to throw in Killer Sofa. Because if you like crazy shit that makes no sense, Killer Sofa. But I really was going to go with Slacks. That was amazing.
Funny.
Isn't there a movie about a killer tire or a killer?
Yeah, Rubber.
Yeah, Rubber.
Rubber. That was. Thank you. I couldn't remember the name of it.
There's that one. There's one about a killer condom that I can't remember the title of exactly, but that one came to mind.
I need to see that. It might actually be called Killer Condom.
It might be, actually.
96.
It was found in the Killer Sofa, I believe.
It's the same DNA. I couldn't resist that joke. Come on.
Oh my God.
But on that note,
I think too about I think it was called Dead Alive, the New Zealand fiction, early Peter Jackson film. Sometimes also called a different title, Brain Dead, right? So that one seems to have the same love for absolute gore to the campy extreme.
But yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking this movie would make such a great double feature with so many of these. Like, I want to do this, but my number one would be Rubber. Like, once that came up, I'm like, man, that would be a great fucking double feature to do together. What a weird night that would be. And you'd have to bring people who have no idea what they're getting into at all. So somebody do that and invite me because I want to go. All right, man, let's bring it back to you. Do you want people to follow you on social media? You can be like, hey, leave me the fuck alone.
Right now, I'm lacking it all out. So you can follow me. I have a website where I talk about things I'm working on right now, things I've published, and that is adscahill, SCAHILL.com. And you can find me on Twitter at Andrew Scahill.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I suppose that wraps it up for this week. So as always, I am James Sabata.
And I am Don Guillory.
And we will see you back here at thenecronama.com. I do not like hunky boys. Or do I?